The CEO is a very unique animal. I'm Alex Gertzberg, and this is CEO Confidential, where we learn about this rare breed, one heartbreak, one victory, one story at a time. This show is sponsored by the law firm of Gertzberg Licata, your ally for business growth. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us for another exciting episode of CEO Confidential. Let's talk about our guest, Bob Coppedge, over 40 years in the IT industry. Bob, that makes you old, officially.
Yes, it does. And you and I are going to have a discussion on what the word exciting means.
Let's talk. We're about to find out.
Okay. All right. Challenge accepted.
Owner and CEO at Symplex IT, Bob has firsthand experience in all facets of the IT industry. He's been a developer, a network engineer, IT director, CIO, and a consultant. And that was before he was the CEO of his company, or maybe alongside it. This brought him to create a model of co-managed IT services that he has coined commits. Commits?
Yep.
Commits. It rolls off the tongue.
It does. It sounds, unfortunately, very much like a pandemic, but
that was before. You had it first, though.
I know. I got it first, so I should be suing a germ or something.
You should be suing COVID. I know a good lawyer. As an author of 2 books on this model, he's become a popular speaker on the subject and was the first to offer this service in a structured way. Folks, I give you Bob Coppedge. Bob, welcome to our show.
Yay. Thanks.
Thanks for being here. So Bob, you have a story to tell. I want to hear it. Tell me about that time when you really started working less in the business and more on the business.
So on one hand, I'm going to disappoint you because it is not a binary switch. It is not something that says, oh, Monday, I'm a geek dealing with client issues and servers. Tuesday, oh, look, I'm a CEO and all. But it's interesting because it is absolutely a transactional journey. And you can go back to like E-Myth books and all of that kind of fun stuff to talk about it. But the bottom line is it absolutely is a journey, and it's one that if you're going to be successful, especially from a growth standpoint, you're gonna take whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
And so from my standpoint, it was always every year it was, by the end of this year, I want to be doing less of this and more of this. And then the next year, okay, we did that. Now we're going to do less of this and more of this.
Well, start us from the beginning. There was a time when you worked entirely in the business. Right?
Absolutely.
So walk us through that journey and give me an idea. What's the time frame we're talking about when that journey really kind of starts?
Sure. So started the company Symplex IT in 2007 and really transitioned from a consultant at that time, which I'd done for 2 or 3 years, into the managed service. And managed services, or MSP, that industry is more or less where you are, a client is outsourcing some or all of their IT services to organizations such as myself. Like everything else, there's also different interpretations of it. Since I came from a CIO background, head geek, whatever, I had a little bit more management understanding and business understanding that probably a lot of folks who in my situation did. But there was no question. I have to be the one primarily, because to start with, I actually did start with one employee because I had a couple of clients that I could transition over. But it was still about 90% I'm actually making the donuts.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actually working with clients and working with that. But there was always that whole, we want that to grow. We want to bring that up. We want to do it better. We want to, do more with less. We want to do all those kind of things. Well, they're not going to happen by themselves. Right. And there's, of course, this, well, I'll outsource it. If I just buy this book, if I just take this course, if I just buy this service, all my problems will be solved. And of course, it never is that simple.
Yeah. And today, I should have asked you this at the beginning. Give me an idea give me some vitals about your company. How big, number of employees,
sure,
customer base, things like that.
Yep. So we're in Northeast Ohio. We're down in Stowe. between Cleveland and Akron, and we've got about 20 employees, give or take a couple full-time, part-times. And we are in that getting towards the 5 million area as far as revenue side, still a couple of years away from that. We've always been profitable. We've always grown from year to year as far as revenue and all that kind of fun stuff. And of our 20 or 20 or so employees, a majority of them, about 15 or so, are on the service delivery standpoint, and the rest are in sales, marketing, support, that kind of fun stuff.
Right.
Uh,
And so you get to a point where you realize that scaling is important to you, right? And working in the business will take up a lot of your time
Right.
and will limit your ability to scale, I presume. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And first of all, from my aspect of it, that should be a known from day one.
Mm.
That's not a discovery along the way. I shouldn't say you don't want it to be a discovery along the way, because then everything you've done up to that point have this rude awakening. Now, you may not be able to do it from the day one, but you have to know that that's the future.
Yeah.
That you're going to start moving from that. So it's always been a situation of wanting to work into the whole work on the business on some level or another.
Yeah. Well, so everyone's journey is different,
Yep.
but I think everyone's journey involves pain and suffering and trial and error and more error and more error. Talk about your journey.
So first of all, failure has such a bad reputation.
Right.
I mean, this whole thing about, failure equals pain. No, failure involves whatever the heck you can make out of it. And in some cases, if the stakes are high enough, failure is very, very painful. But failure is also the learning. What was it Edison said? Making a light bulb was easy. Just find out the bad ways to do it, enough times, and you'll make one.
Right.
Which is not at all what he said, but it's what he meant.
Yeah.
So the thing is that we tried some really stupid marketing. We wasted early on about $3,000 by just doing this huge marketing campaign, and $3,000 for us was a lot of money back then. And we ended up getting, we contacted like 600 companies or 1,000 companies. I don't even remember the number. And we ended up getting one client and one lead.
Yeah.
Which over a span of about 8 years, we finally made our money back.
Yeah.
But that's not going to work. And we've tried some other marketing stuff that just absolutely worked horribly. We brought on some vendors that underperformed as far as what they said they were going to do. I hired some employees that were just what I call lazy hires, where I really didn't work on getting the culture integrated and all that kind of fun stuff. I mean, the list is long.
Yeah.
But there's actually a standing joke here at Symplex IT. The term is, we shall never speak of that again.
Right.
And I actually, it's a joke because we will always speak of it.
Right.
Everybody here is entitled to fail.
Yeah.
Every one of us. And I will show the way, because that's, if you don't have that, then where's the risks?
There's this really great story I heard. I don't know if it's true, but I heard it, so I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So it must be true. The internet,
Especially if it's on the internet.
right? Sheryl Sandberg, Zuckerberg's partner, in Facebook, but I think she was like the CEO of Yahoo at one point. If I'm getting this right, when she was growing up, they would sit around the kitchen table, she and her siblings, and their dad would say, "All right, let's go around the table. Who had the best failure today?" And they would go around, and everybody would have to say something that they tried, and if they got the best failure, then everybody really celebrated it, and it hardwired in her mind that failure is how you learn and grow, and you should celebrate it so long as you're learning and growing from it. And you look at Yahoo, you look at Facebook, it is all about, Facebook's whole thing is move fast and break things, right?
Yeah.
It is the every Silicon Valley story is about, iterating through failure. Anyway, I appreciate the value of failure as much as you do. Your getting back to your journey of, well, let me ask you this: How
Sure.
much of your time do you spend in the business today relative to on the business work?
So right now I'm probably about 30% in the business,
In the business.
if you will.
Okay.
And on the
Yeah.
technical side, the service delivery, it's probably closer to 5%, if that. And,
Okay.
and everyone, there's actually in our tech room, there's a sign on one of the whiteboards that says things Bob is not allowed to touch. And it's a list of things, and some of it's my handwriting, and it's a joke.
Right.
But it's also a reminder to everybody, including me, that that's not the best use of my time. And people will, the techs here, they will remind me of that, which is
That's
absolutely fantastic.
That's I'm gonna totally rip that off. That's
Absolutely.
brilliant. Yeah. Um, do you ever like come into work one day and see that the list just got longer without your knowing it, and people just like just added stuff to it because they don't want you involved?
No, because they will tell me to my face.
Okay.
So do I ever get we're adding that to the list, Bob? Which is great because part of the company culture, for any company culture, is you want to have catchphrases which eliminate all sorts of conversation that you have to remind. No, if you basically, Bob, we're putting that on the list.
Yeah.
That's basically a way to tell me to get the heck out of the way because professionals want to get this done, amateur, you know. And that's because boom, get it, move on. There's no insult, there's no slam, there's no
Right.
slight. We don't have to worry about bruised feelings or egos or anything along those lines. So that kind of thing is absolutely fantastic.
You know, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I wasn't planning on talking about this today, but I've been talking about it nonstop over here in our organization, and it is such an incredible concept. And it is the idea that um, entrepreneurs, um, all of them have a whole lot of things that they do well, but only one or two or maybe three things that they do really, really, really well, like great, like exceptionally, right? And that the journey of the entrepreneur is about slicing things off methodically, a little bit at a time until you get to that, you narrow that aperture to those one or two or three things. And once you know it, you spend most of your time in it. And whenever you try to go outside of it, you have a highway barrier there. And in your
Yeah,
case, it's that list, or it's somebody saying, no, this is not your lane. This is what you pay me to do.
right.
You're now, Bob, I know you're the CEO, but you're getting in my seat.
Yep.
And it, you know, I see companies who have done this really, really well, and then I see companies that struggle to do it, and companies that just, um, it sounds like you do that really well.
Well, and I think there's a good, I'll even add one more thing to that. It's not only an issue of you know what you do well and you know what you do poorly, but you also know what your people can do as well or better than you.
Right.
Because there's always that issue about, in theory, I make more money than most of the people in my company. Uh, More importantly, there's only one of me and we're not hiring any more of me.
Yeah.
So you could make the case that whatever because I hate time is money. I love money is time.
Mm,
All
yeah.
right. So I'm always looking for what can we do to optimize the time. And I want work to go downhill as far as skills and costs. And so it's one of those where not only do I want to basically delegate the stuff that I do poorly, I also want to delegate the stuff that other people can do as well or better.
Well, so let's talk about when that does not happen, right? One of the one of the growing pains of slicing things off of your plate, or of extracting yourself from in the business work, is that you are now entrusting people around you to do work that you at least think you can do better, whether you can it's but we're kind of control freaks. CEOs and entrepreneurs are the the muscle and the drive that said, you know, I don't want to work for someone else. I want to work for myself.
Right.
Um, there's a control element there. I want to control my own destiny. I want to control my work product. I want to control my relationship with my client.
Right.
And then that control kind of bites you in the ass, I think, when you release it and you watch somebody else do something differently from the way you would do it. How have you dealt with that? How have you experienced that?
Well, part of the challenge is it's a sandbox, right? From the standpoint of you want, or a black box, you could also say, I want, at the end of the day, I want this result to happen, and here are the results I need to have happen. I have to delegate this responsibility to somebody else that they'll do the same thing. And for example, when we had, well, the shutdowns and all that kind of fun stuff, I still came to the office because I only live about 10 minutes up the road. So I have this 4,000 square foot office. I was the only one here, which meant I'm doing the banking.
Yeah.
I'm doing the deposits. I'm doing all that kind of fun stuff, which was okay for a while. But then finally somebody said, you really shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And it was like, but I got this down to a system, and I got pushed back by my office manager, client relations manager, who basically said, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And it was like, okay, you're right.
Yeah. Well,
and so we made arrangements for somebody else to come in and do that.
have you, I'm not shy about this. I've said it many times. I have this really unique but hellacious combination of OCD and ADD that kind of do battle with each other. But one usually wins, but they're always fighting, right? My OCD has taken years to get under control, and I still don't know that I have. But um, do you have control issues?
So as we talked about before, I do have Asperger's. So I do have some challenges, some issues, and all that kind of fun stuff. And I honestly, although I knew there was something different about me, it wasn't until about a year ago or so, a little over a year ago, where it got formally, yep, that's what that is. And I totally reject the concept of wrong with me, by the way. It's just different, as you know from your stuff. But it's one of those where, as I tell people, I have an ego a mile thick. There's nothing you can do to dent it. So I don't look at this as any of this stuff going on as this reflects badly on me, or I'm going to look stupid if this happens or if that happens. Or I can usually pretty quickly recognize it. Always with exceptions, always with exceptions. So I'm usually able to kind of distance myself from the situation and go, yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Now, I sometimes will snap back to, but I can do it better. I can do it quicker. I don't need to show anybody else how to do it because I know how to empty the trash properly.
So it almost seems like the Asperger's is kind of an asset in this case, right? It's helped you well, thicken your ego, right?
Yeah, this is one where I hesitate to get too deep into the what are the explicit results, pluses, minuses, or whatever. Just simply because the only person with Asperger's that I'm an expert on is me.
Yeah.
And I hate to this is actually the first time on a public venue that I'm actually talking about this, not because I'm embarrassed or ashamed or anything along those lines, but because the only person I can talk about is really myself. From the aspect of I can absolutely walk into a scenario or a situation, and I am very, very quick to be able to analyze everything, the pieces that are moving, how things are, and figure out what's either missing, what's needed, the process, all of that. I can do that better and faster and stronger than 90% of the people that I meet. Now, is that Asperger's? Is it something else? I don't know. And honestly, I don't care because it's me. I also cannot have a personal relation. I mean, I don't do people well. There's absolutely times where I'm very uncomfortable, but I've learned to fake it. But I don't do interpersonal conversations, relationships. I'm not a hugger, any of that sort of stuff. But I've learned to kind of put a face forward, fake it. And as long as it doesn't go for too long, I will burn out over a period of time. And I need to get back and away from people. My wife kind of knows the triggers to go, pull him away, kind of thing. And then I could kind of reboot.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I feel like that's a whole, like, I want to do a whole nother episode with you on just Asperger's and OCD and anxiety. And I mean, I think I mentioned this to you when we talked before. I or maybe it was earlier today in a meeting. My memory is also horrible. The the I don't know any entrepreneur or leader who doesn't have something going on, right? That they don't talk about. It's a different way of processing information. It's a different way of communicating. There's always something there. And this conversation, I mean, that's a direction we can take this conversation for hours.
Yeah.
Um,
And part of that is I think you're right, because I've talked about it at some peer meetings and all of that kind of fun stuff, and I've been followed up with several people who go, "Wow, I thought I was the only one. I have this," or whatever, which is fine. But I think there has been so much of an increase over the past quarter century, especially in terms of diagnosing, labeling,
right.
all of that, and in some cases, and again, the one thing I want to make sure is there are so many people who have so much worse of a life than I do, that are dealing with these things. I do not mean to minimize this, and I sure as hell don't mean to make it like I'm some kind of hero or whatever. I'm Bob. That's it. Good, bad, and indifferent. I have challenges. I also have abilities, and thankfully I've found ways to work it out. Uh, but absolutely, the entrepreneurial idea that there are certain strengths that these behaviors bring that particularly help people who want to, I see this, I want to engage it, I want to change it, I want to make this mine,
Right.
which
Right.
is that entrepreneurial spirit, for lack of a better word.
Well, and frankly, I mean, this, just to tie it back into the whole unique ability thing, the best entrepreneurs I know are able to take what other people consider limitations and turn them into assets and turn
Yeah.
them into opportunities. Um, with respect to the on the business versus in the business sort of choice, dichotomy, whatever you want to call
Yep.
it. I want to talk a little bit about systems and what you and I, either just now or before, there's eMyth, there's EOS, there's um, um, scaling up.
Rockefeller,
Right?
there's
Yeah,
scaling up.
there's a ton of frameworks out
Yep.
there, right? They and so, but they all talk about having systems, having repeatable processes that are well documented, that they're they're all systems within systems. Talk about what your experience has been. What do you use? What kind of systems do you work with? What's worked? What hasn't?
So, as we mentioned, I used to be IT director for a municipality for about 6-8 years. They went through strategic planning process, and this would have been back in the 80s because, as we discussed, I'm old. And then I also was CIO of a manufacturing company for about 12, 14 years. We also went through strategic planning process. And in both cases, this was a getting management together, putting together some high-priced consultants, a lot of white paper up on the boards, all that kind of fun stuff. And then we put together this great 3-year, 5-year strategic plan, all of that kind of stuff. We're done. We clap each other on the back. And then every time we leave the door, we leave through the doorway, this magical dust comes down and creates what I call basically doorway amnesia, because everybody forgot about all the plans.
Right.
Everybody, we got back to day-to-day operations, and we never spoke of it again, except for once a year. We'll dust off the book and go, yeah, remember that? Yeah, we're in good shape.
Right.
And nothing gets done. Thankfully, there's been a lot of frameworks, because if you take a look at your business, there is what you envision happening and what actually happens. And often there's really not a great connection. Or the connection is simply whatever you want to have happen, start yelling it more frequently and more loud when it doesn't happen.
Right.
We're supposed to do this.
Right.
And so the frameworks that are coming out, we talked about Rockefeller, EOS, Systemology is another one, which I think is great because it just includes the name. All of these are essentially attempts to bridge that chasm between the strategic thinking for an organization, meaning we're talking years down the road, and that tactical or day-to-day operational, what are we doing? I'm a fan of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It scaled nicely for us, and it basically creates the framework. And the reason we need the framework is because it's already been invented.
Right.
I don't need to invent a new way of us to communicate, to organize, to basically make sure we're all on the same page operationally. I'm going to focus on the business that I'm trying to build.
Yep.
And I enjoy EOS. It's been very, very valuable for us, but I'm not saying it is the best or the only or whatever. Absolutely no interest whatsoever in changing. But the idea is that framework, it puts everybody on the same page. It basically creates, and by everybody, I mean not only person A and person B, but the person A who's thinking strategically and the same person A who's thinking operationally. They can essentially integrate those two parts of the mind and the brain when it comes time to, well, how are we going to get this done? Because if you basically say we're going to accomplish this over 3 years, it doesn't start 2 years, 364 days later.
Right. Where are you on the accountability chart?
I actually am. I'm the owner,
Visionary?
CEO, whatever. So I am the dream guy,
The visionary? Yeah.
visionary, and I'm also the operational, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, so you got visionary and then there's integrator. Are you
I can
both?
never remember those two words. Yes,
Yeah.
visionary and
Visionary
integrator.
and integrator.
And this is one where I'm trying to get myself out of it. So right now we have the visionary, who is me, who I'm the idea guy, the one, all that kind of fun stuff. The integrator is the one who actually makes the train run on time. And that's been my role as well, because we weren't large enough.
Yeah.
But it's also one where I've recognized, and for the past couple of years, I've been telling everybody I'm getting out of that business ultimately and bringing on a COO. Now, I've also made it so that I only have 2 people reporting to me, my sales and marketing director and my tech director. They're the only ones. They're tasked with a lot of the integrator role for this purpose.
Yeah. Did you ever read that book, Rocket Fuel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That book really opened my eyes. We've been running on EOS for about 3 years, and the biggest aha moment that I've had over the last 3 years was, there are integrators out there. My brain does not work as an integrator.
Right.
I'm just in the visionary seat. And when I took myself out of the integrator seat, now your brain is wired much better than mine, so you could do it. But we went out, we got a fractional integrator.
Did you do that? That worked for you?
Oh my, she's amazing. She's so good. She's a CPA. And it turns out that there's a cottage industry of almost like brokers who will find your integrator for you. I spent months. I mean, we brought in a couple candidates. We had them run our meetings to see how we jived. We said no a lot. I personally spent days interviewing a dozen or so candidates to be our integrator. And when we landed on Sharon, man, I mean, it was like an elephant getting off of my chest, just like she runs our meetings. I don't have to think about agendas, or the weekly, the quarterly. She runs the departmental meetings. It is very liberating to have someone be in the visionary seat and someone be in the integrator seat. And that was huge for me. But again, I have the ADD OCD thing going on. So I needed focus. You're probably better at sitting in multiple seats than I am.
Yes, we'll say that I'm better. Someone's going to grade me on this.
Who's going to call you out?
Let me give you my version of that.
Yeah.
And is it okay to name organization?
Of course.
Okay,
of course.
Cool. So we brought in we tried EOS on our own.
Yeah.
And failed spectacularly. We actually got benefit out of it, but it just wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
And then we decided, okay, we're going to go with the coach, and we ended up with a group, I think Westlake, Culture Shock.
Yes, I know them. Kaminsky, Ron Kaminsky's group.
Well, we dealt pretty much with Kimberly.
Kim, yes.
Right. So she ended up being our coach.
Yeah.
Brought her in, absolutely fantastic. Was able to work with our personalities, and by that I mean mine. Very productive, all that. And we got to the point last year where at the beginning of 2020, we said, we're going to go COO. And we were going fractional.
Yeah.
Okay. Fractional basically being a portion, instead of getting, 100% of that role, because there's fractional CIOs, fractional COOs, fractional CEOs. Anyway. And then this funny thing happened with the pandemic. I don't know if you heard about it, but it was in all the papers.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Whatever.
So we had to put that on hold. And then around August of last year, I was looking at how we were doing sales and marketing, and I just didn't like it. And it was, I was in one of our meeting rooms by myself because I was the only one in the office. And I had this whiteboard built out, which basically just showed me we're doing it wrong. Marketing and sales were succeeding, but we're doing it wrong. Had that epiphany. And so what I had to do then was had to completely swing from, instead of going for a fractional or full-time COO, we had to redo completely our sales and marketing from beginning to end. And so that ended up being taking over from our rocks, which is goals and objectives and all that kind of fun stuff. And we're only just now finishing that build. We just offered and hired a new salesperson and redid our website, our marketing, all of that kind of fun stuff. But we will be getting then back to the COO conversation at some point. I'm hoping fourth quarter, first quarter. But
there are companies that I really admire, and entrepreneurs and CEOs that I really admire, who have time and again told me that was the start of a whole new chapter. Getting the right COO, getting an integrator in there that was different from the visionary. So I think you're on the right track, Bob. I have taken up way too much of your time. But this was great. This was great. Thank you so much for giving us your experience and your story. Bob, I know that well, first of all, you've got an amazing book that you wrote that I want everybody to check out. It's called A CEO's Survival Guide to IT. I have it. I've read it. I'm a dumb lawyer who does not understand IT, and I feel like I understand IT a lot better after reading your book. So thank you for that, for writing it, and everybody check that out. You have a second book, it's called I Don't Want Your Job.
Right. So I've written one book, which is essentially the CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology, and that was written for CEOs who would love to abdicate their responsibility of IT, because there are a lot of decisions that the geeks should not be making, security, backups, all that kind of fun stuff. So try to explain that. And then, as you talked about in the beginning, we're one of the industry leaders in co-managed IT services, or COMETs, which is where we actually, instead of completely outsourcing IT, they create a partnership between the internal IT folks who do what they do best and ourselves who do what we do best in a partnership. And so I wrote the book, I Don't Want Your Job, Is Co-Managed IT Services the Right Fit for You? And that's actually, I've written the only 2 books on that topic in the industry.
It seems like such a logical progression, right? From the first book is to the second book. As you scale your business, you go from the CEO managing their own IT to co-managed.
Right.
Yeah. Symplex-IT.com. You're on LinkedIn. You're Bob Coppedge. People should check you out. Bob, thank you.
Actually, on LinkedIn, I am RL Coppedge for some weird reason.
You are RL Coppedge. That's right. Well, if you don't want to write that down, folks, Symplex IT has only one Coppedge. Is that fair?
There you go. Absolutely.
All right, there you go. Now you don't have to remember anything, or check out the show notes over here. In any case, Bob, you're one of the most interesting dudes I've gotten to talk to. So thanks for talking.
I appreciate that. And this was exciting.
Oh, good. You have to change your standards, but thank you very much. All right, folks, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to CEO Confidential. I hope you enjoyed it. Visit us at ceoconfidential.net and visit our sponsors, the business law firm of Gertzberg Licata and Cover My Six, a business solution that flushes out and repairs legal minefields before they blow up in court. We'll see you next time right here for another episode of CEO Confidential.